Welcome to the Crawcast. I'm your host, George Krawczak, and these are my predictions for Week 17 of the NFL season. And if you like this type of content, make sure to hit that subscribe button like it owes you money. Now let's get started. The first game is the Dallas Cowboys, who are 6-8-1, versus the Washington Commanders, who are 4-11, and I think the Cowboys are going to win. So you have the Cowboys versus the Commanders. The Cowboys really should win this. The Commanders are on their third-string quarterback, Josh Johnson, who's starting, which is kind of a disaster because he's been terrible everywhere he's played. And and then the Cowboys, their offense is really good, but their defense does struggle quite a lot. But I just think this Cowboys offense is just too much for this Commanders team to overcome. And also, this game doesn't really matter. Both are out of the playoffs. Both are fighting for nothing. Honestly, if I was the Cowboys, I'd probably shut Dak Prescott down and CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. So we'll see. But the Cowboys should win this one. They're a much better team. The next game is the Detroit Lions, who are 8-7, versus the Minnesota Vikings, who are 7-8. And I think the Lions should win. So, Lions versus the Vikings. The Lions should win this one. So, the Lions are fighting for a playoff spot. They probably won't get it because what they need to happen is they need to win their next two, and they need the Packers to lose their next two, which is probably not going to happen. So, you have Max Brosmer coming in, and he had a disastrous start, his first start. And then what happened, though, is the Vikings did previously beat the Lions, and that was based off their strong defense and J.J. McCarthy playing just decently well not to blow it. So, can Max Brosmer come in and just not blow it? I find that hard to believe, and since Detroit's fighting for everything, like if they lose this game, they're out of the playoffs. Their season is over. And they have such a high-powered offense. Even though their defense is terrible, they do have a high-powered offense. I just think the Lions are going to win this one because they need it, and I am picking the Lions for this one. And like I said, Max Brosmer, he's terrible, so the Vikings might have a chance. The defense keeps them in it, and Max Brosmer just plays well enough to not blow it. But I just find that hard to believe, so I think the Lions are going to win. The next game is the Denver Broncos, who are 12-3, versus the Kansas City Chiefs, who are 6-9, and I think the Broncos are going to win. So this is another one where the Broncos are a good team and the Chiefs aren't. Like, I'd probably pick the Broncos even if it was the normal Chiefs, but now they're on the third-string quarterback, Chris Aluakun, I think his name is, and just the Chiefs don't have a shot. And they're not playing for anything. They put all their starters on IR. Just the Chiefs are done. And then the Broncos, strong defense. Bo Nix does need to play a little bit more consistent, a little bit better, but the Broncos should win this one and pretty easily. The next game is the Houston Texans, who are 10-5, versus the Los Angeles Chargers, who are 11-4, and I think the Chargers are going to win. So you have the Texans versus the Chargers. In this game, I kind of kept going back and forth on because you have the Chargers' offense, which is inconsistent because their offensive line is terrible, and sometimes Herbert wills them, to a great performance, and sometimes he doesn't. But overall, the Chargers' defense is pretty decent. Where you have the Texans, who their defense is the best defense in the NFL, or at least one of them. And then all of a sudden, CJ Stroud, he can have a great game and he can have a terrible game. So it's kind of like really 50-50. But if you take everything in a whole, where yes, the Texans have a better defense, but they have a worse offense. And I think as a team, the Chargers are probably just a little bit better. So I am picking the Chargers. But this could be a close one because this Texans defense is so good. And CJ Stroud just feels like such a question mark every week that I feel like you have to pick the Chargers in this one. The next game is the Baltimore Ravens, who are 7-8, versus the Green Bay Packers, who are 9-5-1, and I think the Packers are going to win. So you have the Ravens versus the Packers. I am picking the Packers because I think they're more likely to have a good quarterback starting. So Tyler Huntley, I don't think Lamar Jackson is going to play. It'll most likely be Tyler Huntley with the season on the line, and I just don't believe in Tyler Huntley at all. And then with the Packers, there's a shot that it could be Clayton Thune, who's their third string who is their quarterback on their practice squad, who, if he's playing, the Packers really don't have a shot. But I do think Malik Willis will play for shoulder, even though he's dealing with a shoulder injury, or Jordan Love will play, even though he's not still on concussion protocol. And I think the Packers should win this. They're fighting for a playoff spot. Like, both these teams really need to win this game for the playoffs. And I just think the Packers are more likely to win it, even though they're dealing with way more injuries than the Ravens are. And like I said, I just think a lot of this depends on the quarterback, and I trust Malik Willis and Jordan Love over Tyler Huntley, so I just think the Packers are going to win this one. The next game is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the Miami Dolphins, and the Buccaneers are 7-8, and the Dolphins are 6-9. So you have the Buccaneers versus the Dolphins. Quinn Ewers making his second start. I kind of was going back and forth on it because the Buccaneers just seem to be having a historic collapse this season, but I just can't pick the Dolphins. This game means so much for the Buccaneers. They're trying to win to make the playoffs and beat the Panthers for the division. And so that's kind of my logic there, where it's like, okay, better team with more on the line, so they must win. And I think the Buccaneers probably will win this one because the Dolphins have just been a disaster this entire season. And even though the Buccaneers are completely collapsing, I just think they should beat the Dolphins because the Dolphins are just that bad on both offense and defense. The next game is the New England Patriots, who are 12-3, versus the New York Jets, who are 3-12, and I think the Patriots are going to win. So kind of like with a lot of these, the Patriots are good, and then the Jets are just historically bad. I kind of hope the Jets get at least one interception because that'll be sad if they go the whole season without getting an interception. But Brady Cook clearly not the answer. Jets defense terrible, Jets offense terrible, and even though the Patriots haven't beat many good teams, they at least have won games they should have won, and you do deserve credit for winning games. So the Patriots should dominate this one. They should win this one. Kind of no excuses, it feels like. The next game is the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are 9-6, versus the Cleveland Browns, who are 3-12, and I think the Steelers are going to win. So you have the Steelers versus the Browns, which is interesting because Steelers are missing DK Metcalf, and this fan said he's going to hold a press conference regarding DK Metcalf on Friday, and so I will do a breakdown video of that whole situation probably on Friday or Saturday. So you have Steelers versus the Browns. Steelers are missing DK Metcalf, but even though he's been a huge deep threat and a big play guy, the Steelers can probably survive without him. The Browns, their defense is still very good. It's still an elite defense, but their offense has struggled, and the Steelers defense did really, really well against the Lions, and the Lions do have an elite offense. So I think the Steelers should win this one. They're fighting for a playoff spot, and they win this one. They win the division, make the playoffs. And Shedeur Sanders, I understand he is still fighting for his job because he wants to make sure the Browns do not get the number 1 overall pick and draft his replacement. But overall, I just think the Steelers are a better team, and the Steelers should win this one. The next game is the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are 11-4, versus the Indianapolis Colts, who are 8-7, and I think the Jaguars are going to win. So first off, you do have to give Philip Rivers credit because he did actually look really good last week. Other than the pick six, he played extremely well, which is good because in the Seattle game, the first one, he did not really look that good at all. And then the Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence has been the best quarterback in football the last 4 weeks. And if he can keep this up, the Jags could potentially be a Super Bowl team. I don't really believe in Trevor Lawrence. So I think there's a chance he could fall apart and kind of revert back to his old self. But the Jaguars overperformed a lot and have been really good this year. And the Jaguars should win this one, and it should knock the Colts out of the playoffs. It's really unfortunate because the Colts and Packers are the two teams that really went all in on this year. And both of them suffered devastating injuries that ended their season. And that's the thing. That's the risk of going all in. The Jets tried it a couple years ago, lost Aaron Rodgers to injury, and then this year Packers lost basically everybody to injury, and then the Colts lost Daniel Jones, and that's kind of it. So it's unfortunate for the Colts, but I think the Jaguars should win this one. The next game is the New Orleans Saints, who are 5-10, versus the Tennessee Titans, who are 3-12, and I think the Saints are going to win. So this is another game where these two teams have both played really well recently. Tyler Shough has played great the past several games, and so has Cam Ward. If you're the Titans, you kind of prefer to lose this one just because you want a higher chance at the number 1 overall pick. But also, winning does build confidence in the team and in Cam Ward. So I think the Titans are just a slightly better team because they've been in more games this year. And I do think they are just a better team. But this should be a good one. 2 developmental guys who could be the future of their respective franchises. Who knows? But overall, I just think that the Saints have been a better team overall this year compared to the Titans. The next game is the Seattle Seahawks, who are 12-3, versus the Carolina Panthers, who are 8-7. And I think the Seahawks are going to win. This is another game that means decently a lot to both teams. So the Panthers, they're really fighting for keeping the division over the Buccaneers. And then the Seahawks are fighting to remain the 1 seed, which, the 1 seed, obviously it's good to have a bye week, but it's not necessary. But obviously the Panthers need to make the playoffs. But it's weird because the Panthers just seem to beat good teams when they shouldn't. So I thought about picking the Panthers, but I just can't go against the Seahawks. They're playing so well. Their defense is playing great. Sam Darnold's been a bit inconsistent, and he needs to play quite a bit better if they're going to be a Super Bowl team. but I just can't pick against the Seahawks, especially against the Panthers, or Bryce Young's throwing like 100 yards a game. But overall, I think the Seahawks are going to win. But I think it'll be a close one because of, like I said, the track record of the Panthers being in games they shouldn't be in. The next game is the Arizona Cardinals, who are 3-12, versus the Cincinnati Bengals, who are 5-10. And I think the Cardinals are going to win. So I need to have a patented upset of the week, and I just felt like there wasn't really many games that there could have been, and so this is my big upset of the week, because I think the Cardinals will beat the Bengals. Jacoby Brissett has played decent, not amazing, this season. And I think the Bengals defense is the first. I don't think he's going to win as a starter. I could be wrong about that. But I think the Panthers the Panthers. The Bengals, their defense is so bad that it'll give him an opportunity to finally get his first win. And then Joe Burrow. He's played great the past couple of weeks, but he's been inconsistent when he's been on the field. But also the Cardinals defense is bad too. So I just think this has the highest chance of being an upset just because of how bad the Bengals defense is. But it really could go either way. And this game doesn't matter because neither team is really fighting for anything. The next game is the New York Giants, who are 2-13, versus the Las Vegas Raiders, who are 2-13, and I think the Giants are going to win. So this is the battle for the 1 seed. Both teams really want to lose this game. The Raiders, they want to draft their quarterback for the future, and the Giants want to trade away the first overall pick for tons of picks to get their quarterback, or to build a good team around Jackson Dart. So I think the Giants are a better team because even in their losses, it felt like they've been in most games, whereas a lot of the Raiders' losses, they've been completely destroyed and dominated. The Raiders was one of the best games they looked in a while last week, so maybe they're on the up and up. I don't know. And then the Giants had one of their worst games of last week, where their defense has still played well and the defense is still good, but their Jackson Dart really struggled last week against a good Minnesota defense. But overall, the Raiders are just a worse team. I think they're the worst team in the NFL, and so I think the Giants should win this one, and I think it has a shot at being a blowout. We'll see what Genty and Geno Smith can do, but overall, I think the Giants should win this one. The next game is the Philadelphia Eagles, who are 10-5, versus the Buffalo Bills, who are 11-4, and I think the Bills are going to win. So you have the Eagles versus the Bills, and this is an interesting test for me for the Eagles because they started off the season really hot, and then they had a mid-season collapse. And the past several weeks, they've beaten some really bad teams to save their season. But here's the problem. They beat really bad teams they should have beat. So this is their first real test of, like, are they back? Are they a good team? Are they not collapsing? Or are they just kind of fluky because they beat bad teams and now they're going back to collapsing since they're against a good team? And then the Bills. James Cook has played great. Josh Allen's played great this season. Their defense has been a little disappointing at times, but overall, these are both two pretty good teams that are fighting for a Super Bowl spot, and it should be an interesting one. I just think the Bills are a bit better, so the Bills should be able to win this one. And like I said, this game means the most for the Eagles, just to test, see how well they'll do against an actual team, as opposed to beating up on bad teams. The next game is the Chicago Bears, who are 11-4, versus San Francisco 49ers, who are 11-4, and I think the 49ers are going to win. So you have the Bears versus the 49ers, and this is going to be an interesting one because, like I said about the Eagles, it's going to be a big test for the Bears because the 49ers are a really good team, and the Bears have largely been beating bad teams, and then they got a fluky win against Malik Willis, where they should have lost because it should have been a recovered onside kick. And really, just the Packers kind of just shot themselves in the foot last week. And the 49ers. Brock Purdy played a fantastic last week. Their defense, although struggled at times, overall played really good. And here's the thing about Caleb Williams is it seems like he can make the most fantastic throws. Like he can be rolling out and throw ball perfectly 30 yards downfield, but he misses the easy ones. Or there could be a receiver 5 yards in front of his face wide open, and then he overthrows him by like 5 yards. So it'll be an interesting test for the Bears and Caleb Williams to see what they can do. This should be a close one. Both these teams are obviously playoff teams. It's going to be interesting if they can be Super Bowl teams. I think they're both kind of on the bubble. The 49ers because of their injuries, and then the Bears because I think they're just overperforming where they're at. And then, so I think the 49ers are a better team than the Bears, but it really could go either way and should be an interesting one. The next game is the Rams, who are 11-4, versus the Falcons, who are 6-9, and I think the Rams are going to win. So you have the Rams versus the Falcons, and I'm picking the Rams. I still think the Rams are probably the best team in the NFL right now, and even though they lost to the Seahawks, it felt like a kind of a fluky loss where they really shouldn't have. And like kind of like what I said about the Bears, where like it just felt like things went perfectly right for the Bears, things just went perfectly wrong for the Rams. The the Falcons are interesting because kind of like what I said about the Panthers, the Falcons just seem to beat good teams and lose to bad teams. So this could be close. Kyle Pitts and Kirk Cousins have been playing well recently, but Matthew Stafford's the MVP of the league. This Rams team is very, very good, and I just think the Rams should win this one. So those are my predictions of Week 14 of the NFL, or sorry, not Week 14, Weeks 17 of the NFL season. If you like this type of content, make sure to hit that subscribe button like it owes you money. Sorry I was a little quicker this week. I was just trying to get through it before Christmas, and I'll see you on the next one.